Welcome. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker, who is Emma Newton, who is the Director of Organizing, Food, Agriculture, and Rural Economies for SiX's Agriculture and Food Systems program. Prior to joining SiX, Emma has worked as a community organizer on an industrial dairy moratorium in Oregon and Food and Water Watch. She also worked as an independent impact producer on the documentary film Right to Harm, connecting with communities across the country fighting industrial agriculture. In addition, she has also spent time working with the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project, building capacity and refining communications with coalitions and groups working in the sustainable agriculture field. Emma is a graduate of Vermont Law School, master's program of Food and Agriculture Law and Policy, and holds an MS in Anthrozoology from Canisius College. Thank you so much, Emma, for being with us here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sydney. And thank you to the Repro team for inviting me in to talk with you all about this really major crappy issue that is cropping up. And this is, we're seeing it in quite a few states now for the third year running. It is called the Bayer Bill, also known as Failure to Warn, Cancer Gag Act, Pesticide Immunity. And I wanted to talk to you about this bill today because it has a ton of intersection with the reproductive health space, the work you all are all doing as part of members of the RFLC. And it's just, really, I think, a really impactful bill for your communities. Like if it passes, it will have a lot of impact on your communities, and particularly rural communities and farm workers and agriculture workers in your state. Sorry, my cat is being a little naughty behind me. I will try to ignore that. I'll just give a brief overview. I'm not an expert in the reproductive health space. So you have those experts here in your team, but if you have specific questions, please let me know. I will do my best to answer them. And if not, I will work on finding you the information or connecting you with folks that do know that space. Okay, so what is the Bayer Bill, or Pesticide Immunity, Failure to Warn, Cancer Gag Act, as you might have heard it called? This bill is a classic preemption bill that would prohibit legal action against pesticide companies for harms caused by their products. 2026 is the third legislative session in which these bills have been introduced in state houses across the country, and this is at the impetus of the multinational pesticide industry. Chemical giant Bayer bought Monsanto in 2018 and is also the maker of Roundup and glyphosate. The reason why it's called the Bayer Bill is because Bayer actually wrote much of this bill's language and has been a key force in the lobbying efforts, along with Syngenta, which is owned by ChemChina and is the maker of Paraquat, which has been linked to Parkinson's disease. Bayer is really, and the other chemical giants, Syngenta, ChemChina, and other chemical industry makers are really pursuing this bill at the state level. And they're actually pursuing a multi-pronged strategy that includes the state level. So there's the state level bills that we're going to talk about today. There's federal actions happening, and then there's stuff happening in the Supreme Court. So at the federal level, the Supreme Court has actually just agreed to hear this case, Darnell versus Monsanto, which addresses the question of whether the Federal Pesticide Product Registration Law, also known as FIFRA, so Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, preempts a label-based failure to warn claim where the EPA has not required the warning. So we'll have more on this. We're going to be working on this down the road. This is really important because it gets to the central question at hand. There's over 177,000 lawsuits against Monsanto right now, Bayer, with regards to this issue. And this case before SCOTUS, pushed by Bayer, is because they don't want to pay up. They don't want to deal with these lawsuits that are happening. So this is going to be really important down the road, and we'll have more information. Like I said, we'll have more info to come. So why is this so concerning? Why is this bill so concerning? And there's a couple of reasons why. Exposure to agricultural chemicals, including common herbicides like glyphosate and paraquat, has been associated with elevated risks of multiple cancers, including leukemia, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, bladder, colon, lung, pancreatic, prostate, kidney cancer, the list goes on. And some studies have actually found that the harm from these chemicals is equivalent to the harms caused by smoking cigarettes. Like that's the incident level of cancers is the same as if you were a smoker. Um, Pesticide use also poses serious danger to reproductive health. So plant, fungus, and insect killing chemicals like paraquat and glyphosate have been linked to impaired fertility, reduced sperm count and quality, miscarriage, premature birth, stillbirth, birth defects, low birth weight, developmental disorders, the list goes on. And these chemicals are so pervasive that it's not just the people that are applying the chemicals to the crops, which would oftentimes be agricultural workers, workers that are maybe immigrants, farm laborers, but also the surrounding area. Like they get into our air, our water, our soil. And so folks that live in rural communities are, they may not have any connection to farming, are also being seriously impacted by these chemicals. So even though Bayer and Syngenta claim that their products have been rigorously tested and found to be safe when used as directed, and the EPA, which does evaluate and approve chemicals for safety under this Federal Rodenticide Act, like I mentioned, actually agrees that glyphosate and paraquat pose no human health risks. That has been thoroughly debunked by many scientific studies calling this into question, the safety into question. And actually, just last November, November 2025, a scientific journal formally retracted the most influential and foundational study on glyphosate safety after Monsanto company documents proved that Monsanto actually secretly wrote that paper and paid outside scientists to put their names on it. And so this was the study on glyphosate safety, and it was referenced by chemical manufacturers and their allies and was cited over 800 times, including by the EPA, and it has shaped regulatory decisions worldwide for 25 years on this chemical. And I mentioned earlier that there's 177,000 lawsuits that have been filed against Bayer. And the claims of these lawsuits are that the company has suppressed research linking its Roundup to cancer. And Bayer has actually set aside over $16 billion to fight these cases, where we have actually seen juries award millions of dollars in damages to the plaintiffs. Syngenta is also in the midst of a nearly $200 million legal settlement with thousands of paraquat users that now have Parkinson's disease. So this is like a massive financial impact to Bayer and Syngenta from these lawsuits, which is basically the driving force behind why chemical companies are pursuing these strategies with these preemption pesticide bills, pesticide immunity bills, because they want to eliminate the legal and financial headache caused by these lawsuits. So, like I said, this is a coordinated effort at the federal level, SCOTUS, state levels, by these multinational chemical companies to prevent farmers, agriculture workers, rural community members, and families from taking action when they are harmed by these companies' products. And states are really on the front lines of this coordinated campaign. And they're actually, where it's happening, these states are being seen as easy targets by the industry because of either industry influence in the capital or because there's a conservative majority in the state. And the companies are pursuing this really intense campaign at the state level because they want to bolster their case at SCOTUS and federal level to basically preempt these lawsuits nationwide. So, and I should add, the companies are actually using this narrative frame that this bill is necessary for farmers to continue farming to quickly pass this widely unpopular bill, which has huge bipartisan support when folks actually figure out what this bill does. Nobody likes it. And they want to get it done and under the radar really quickly so that they can continue their strategy of not having to pay any of this money out from their lawsuits. Um, okay, so where is it? Like I said, it's been introduced for 3 years in a row. The first year didn't pass anywhere. The second year it passed in North Dakota and Georgia, unfortunately. And now it has been introduced in 7 states for the 2026 session. But we expect it could be introduced in as many as a dozen states this session, or it could be added to as a rider to omnibus legislation, because it's actually just a single paragraph, and I can share that paragraph language so you can keep an eye out for it. So right now it's in Florida, Iowa again, Kansas, Missouri, Tennessee, and in Tennessee it actually passed the Senate and is now like close to working its way through the House and out of committee in the House. And then in Oklahoma and North Carolina, it's actually a part of carryover bills from last session. And we're closely watching those as well. Um, so I am going to talk about strategies to push back. But just really quickly, is there any like questions about like what is it? Any clarifying questions that folks have like me to answer about anything I just shared because it was a lot of information. And it's okay to hold questions till then too. Okay. All right. I'm going to talk about some strategies and then we can open it up for further discussion afterwards. Okay. So I wanted to give you some tools. You know, this is a really crappy bill. And I want to give you some tools of if this bill is in your state or is being pursued or is soon going to be in your state, I wanted you to be able to be prepared to fight back and push back. So when these bills, like I said, it passed in 2 states last session, and that was because they're only successful when they move under the radar, when they move quickly and are under the radar. Because, like I mentioned earlier, they're tremendously unpopular when folks actually learn about these bills. And there's actually polling that indicates deep bipartisan opposition to these bills. Specifically, a 2024 poll of Iowa farmers and rural community members overwhelmingly found that across demographics and political spectrum, Iowa voters overwhelmingly distrust chemical companies, overwhelmingly oppose giving chemical companies immunity from lawsuits, overwhelming concern about Bayer's and the EPA's history and actions, and overwhelmingly support accountability for chemical companies who cause serious health problems. So, like, the public is and other legislators are like on our side against these bills. So really the only way they're able to get passed is if they move super quickly and are pushed out of committee and there isn't enough time to mount a defensive strategy. We've been working with some lawyers, lawyer allies on this issue. As you can imagine, trial lawyers are not happy about these bills because it's taking away one of their main tools for litigation. And our lawyer allies have shared with us that these bills should be heard by judiciary committees, not agriculture committees, because this is a judicial issue pertaining to rights and remedies, not an agriculture issue. So they suggested that if you can get the bill moved or assigned to judiciary, that would be a really good method to kill the bill. But even if you're in a state where maybe you don't have that power, don't have that ability to get it assigned, there could be ways to raise process objections to this if it is assigned to Ag Committee, voicing your opposition to it being there. We also, as I mentioned earlier, so the industry really wants these bills to be framed as farmer versus regulations. Farmers need these chemicals to farm, and by regulating them, we're hurting farmers. That's a crappy framing. We know it's false. It's a false framing. And instead, we suggest framing this as an issue of large corporations paying for their own mistakes of poisoning communities and farmers. Emphasizing that immunity in this case could set a precedent of impunity for negligent, dangerous business strategies that poison communities for over 57,000 different chemicals that are in daily use in our agriculture system. That would be incredibly dangerous. It's not just about glyphosate. It's not just about paraquat. Those are the two that are sort of at the center of this, but it's 57,000 other chemicals as well that folks would not have their rights and remedies for if they were harmed by them. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a one paragraph basically bill. And so it's really important to be aware of attempts to add Bayer bill language as an amendment to other legislation as a way to avoid the stigma attached to this bill. And I will share that paragraph so that you all are aware of what to look out for. And I do want to go into a little bit depth to a strategy in Iowa that we think is really impactful and could work really well potentially in your state. And I will in a minute, but I just wanted to share before I do that that there's actually ways to be offensive and proactive against this legislation, even if you have not encountered it in your state yet. So defensive is really important. Once it's there, obviously want to fight it. But if you don't have it in your state yet, or you are in the majority in your state, there's offensive strategies that you can take to really prevent it from coming to your state. So two things. At the federal level, Senator Cory Booker has introduced a bill called the Pesticide Injury Accountability Act, which I will drop in the chat momentarily. And this would essentially ban pesticide immunity bills like the Bayer bill. Of course, it's stalled in Congress, as is pretty much everything else. But just like the Justice for Black Farmers Act that was introduced in 2020, we worked with state legislators, many of you, some of you actually on the call, to bring the Justice for Black Farmers Act and Black farmer equity to your states through using the federal legislation as a model. So you could essentially use this Pesticide Injury Accountability Act as a model to do some sort of similar bill in your state that would essentially ban pesticide immunity bills in your state. You could use it as a messaging tool as well, if you don't think it's going to pass, as a way to start a conversation and bring community awareness about this pesticide immunity bills to your community and with your colleagues. And then the other offensive strategy I wanted to mention that's not directly related to pesticide immunity per se, but you might also consider pesticide bans. So some states like Missouri, Iowa, and Pennsylvania are actually considering banning paraquat. And I will drop those sample bills in the chat as well, or send them afterwards as a resource. And that's a way to sort of also get to some of the issues at hand as well. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned that there has been this organizing strategy in Iowa that we think is really unique and could potentially be quite impactful and effective in your state if you're facing the Bayer bill. So Iowa was seen as like by the industry as sort of like grounds zero, I guess you could say, for getting this bill passed. It was one of the first states for it to be introduced. The industry has literally told legislators in the state that they're targeting Iowa because they see it as an easy win for them that would bolster their national strategy. But it hasn't passed in Iowa for 2 years now. And it looks like it, hopefully, fingers crossed, it won't pass again because there's a lot of resistance to it. And I see we have some folks from Iowa on this call that feel free to jump in if you want to share anything about what I'm talking about here as well. So Iowa Rep. Megan Trinibus, who is a physician, is a member of the crop. I believe she's a member of the RFLC too. She has been in contact with us about sharing her experience of working to oppose this bill. So the first year, she really worked with her colleagues and folks in her caucus to oppose this bill by creating pretty much a viral TikTok, essentially, about what this bill does. There wasn't a lot of momentum the first year around in 2024, and so that was an easy win. But since she knew it was coming back around, again, she decided that what they really needed was a ground game. The industry was using this narrative of like farmers are on our side, they need this bill, to be able to farm, and they were really being, kind of successful with this narrative and owning the narrative. So, um, and along with that, cancer, Iowa has the fastest growing rate of cancer in the US, and cancer is a huge issue and has been getting a lot of attention. Cancer rates has been getting a lot of attention recently, in recent years. So she decided that she was going to go out to the communities being impacted by this, the rural Iowa communities, working with the legislators in those districts, not focused on this bill at all, not focused on something that would be sort of like a lightning rod of, you know, blue versus red, conservative versus liberal. She just wanted to really connect with community members around the issue of cancer, and how everyone in Iowa had been really impacted by cancer. And so, working with the Iowa Farmers Union, and some of her colleagues, she went out to these communities, these rural Iowa communities across the state, and essentially held a listening session where folks that had been impacted by cancer could share their story, could share their experience, and be heard by their policymakers. What was really incredible about this tactic was that naturally, without even prompting by her or any other policymaker, pesticides and this bill came up in the course of the conversation as like this is would be dangerous, like, to us, like we all, this folks, our community, our families, they have cancer, and like this bill is gonna continue to harm us even after we've already been harmed. Um, so it was a really incredible way of surfacing the issue, um, by listening to those most impacted, and really having a conversation across political lines, and across demographic info, um, demographic backgrounds, to mount a defense against this bill. And what was really cool as well was, in the process, she invited some of her conservative colleagues to come out and join her, and listen to these stories. And some of them even told her, well, I'm planning on voting yes on this bill, but as a courtesy to you, like I'll come out and listen and hear. And they came out with her. And afterwards, they told her, you know what, this has changed my mind. I'm not going to vote against this bill. This bill is going to harm my community. This bill is going to harm the people that I represent and serve. So it was really, this sort of focusing on rural communities, focusing on uplifting rural voices, focusing on an issue that is like really critical um and like really the like hot button topic of the time, without necessarily focusing on the bill, allowed her to create pathways for folks that otherwise would be for this bill to come in and be like, you know what? No, actually, this is not going to work for us and we're not going to do it. So there actually ended up not being any political will to move this bill forward, last session, and they were able to defeat it. And we have a ton more info about this. Rep Srinivas couldn't join us today, but if you'd like to connect with her and learn more, she tells it much better than I do. And it's really incredible, some of the things that she was able to learn and experience doing this process. But yeah, that I just wanted to share an overview of what this bill does, why it's important, and some strategies to help you all mount a defense or offense. And happy to take any questions.